The Great Stink of 1858. July 1858. The London heat was at its peak, but this heat wasn't just bringing sweat. It brought an unbearable stench that was recorded in history as the Great Stink. At that time, London was the wealthiest city in the world, but beneath its glitter lay a dark black truth. London's lifeline, the River Thames, had become an open sewer line. Every day, millions of gallons of human waste, toxic industrial debris, and rotting blood from slaughterhouses were dumped directly into this river. When the scorching heat of 1858 dried up the river water, the silt that had accumulated for centuries began to boil in the sun. The smell was so horrific that members of parliament couldn't perform their duties. They draped heavy curtains over the windows and soaked them in chemicals, but the rot seeped in through every crack. People were collapsing on the streets. A popular theory at the time was the miasma theory. People believed diseases spread through bad air. They feared this smell would kill them. Yet this stench gave birth to a monumental change. What years of politics couldn't achieve, this smell did in just a few days. Sir Joseph Bazalgette was summoned, and work began on the world's largest and most modern sewer system beneath London. 82 miles of main intercepting sewers and 1,100 miles of street sewers. This wasn't just about laying pipes. It was science's first major victory over the filth that had enslaved humanity for centuries. If it weren't for that stench, today's modern cities might never have existed. The Black Death. In the year 1347, several merchant ships traveled from Crimea and arrived in Sicily. When the crowd standing at the harbor looked inside the ships, their blood ran cold. Most of the sailors were dead, and those who were alive had bodies covered in black blood-filled boils. This was the beginning of the bacteria called Yersinia pestis, which was entering humans through fleas living on rats. In medieval Europe, there was no trace of sanitation. People threw their waste out of windows and rats slept beneath their beds. It was a paradise for the virus. This disease moved so fast that people would wake up healthy in the morning and be dead by evening. Doctors were baffled. They began wearing those terrifying beak-shaped masks, thinking the aromatic herbs stuffed in the beak would protect them from the virus. But the dance of death did not stop. In the blink of an eye, 33% to 50% of Europe's population was wiped out. Entire villages were emptied. Crops rotted in the fields because no one was left to harvest them. It changed the world's social structure. Laborers became scarce, so their value increased, and this marked the beginning of the end for feudalism. The Black Death taught humanity that an invisible germ could bring the greatest empires to their knees. Smallpox. In all of history, there has been no disease more terrifying than smallpox. This was a virus that not only disfigured the human body, but erased entire civilizations from the face of the earth. When European explorers like Columbus and subsequent invaders reached the Americas, they didn't just bring guns, they brought a biological weapon, the variola virus. The indigenous population of America had no immunity to fight this virus. The impact was catastrophic. Smallpox created red spots on the body that later turned into pus-filled boils. The pain was so agonizing that patients couldn't even move. According to historians, smallpox wiped out 90% of the Native American population. Great empires like the Aztecs and Incas collapsed without a single battle, solely because of this virus. Smallpox haunted humanity for thousands of years, but it also became science's greatest victory. In 1796, Edward Jenner discovered the first vaccine for this disease, which eventually led to the total eradication of the virus in 1980. Cholera. In the 19th century, a new disease emerged known as the Blue Death, cholera. It originated in India's Ganges Delta and spread across the globe via trade routes. Cholera was caused by the Vibrio cholerae bacteria, which thrived in contaminated water and food. Its mortality rate was terrifying. Patients suffered such severe diarrhea and vomiting that their bodies would dehydrate within hours. The loss of water was so extreme that the blood thickened and the skin turned blue. People would eat breakfast in the morning and be a corpse by noon. At that time, people still believed it spread through bad air. But in 1854, London's Dr. John Snow made a revolutionary discovery. He proved that cholera wasn't airborne. It was spreading from a contaminated water pump on Broad Street. This was the foundation of modern epidemiology. Cholera taught the world that clean drinking water is the real difference between life and death. The Spanish flu, 1918. Just as the cannons of World War I were falling silent in 1918, another quiet war began. Emerging from a military camp in Kansas, USA, this virus traveled to France with American soldiers and then unleashed havoc across the globe. The Spanish flu claimed up to 100 million lives in just 2 years. The most terrifying aspect of this virus was that it didn't target the children or the elderly, but healthy young adults between the ages of 20 and 40. This was caused by a cytokine storm, where a person's own immune system attacks their lungs. The patient's face would turn blue, and they would suffocate to death as their lungs filled with blood. This was the first pandemic that taught the world the importance of masks and social distancing. The Dancing Plague of 1518. In history, there have been some diseases whose mysteries remain unsolved to this day. In July 1518, in the streets of Strasbourg, France, a woman suddenly began to dance. Within weeks, more than 400 people had joined her. They couldn't stop. They danced for weeks until their feet were bloodied and they died of heart attacks or sheer exhaustion. Officials at the time thought the cure was more dancing, so they built stages and summoned musicians, which only made matters worse. Today's scientists believe it was a mass psychogenic illness born from extreme stress and famine. Some theories suggest it was caused by a fungus called ergot that grows on grain and causes hallucinations in the human brain. This point shows that a pandemic can be mental just as much as it is physical. Polio. In the mid-20th century, there was one fear in every American home: polio. This virus specifically attacked children, leaving them paralyzed for life. As summer approached, parents would lock their children inside their homes. Swimming pools and movie theaters stood empty because no one knew where the virus would strike from. Most terrifying of all was the iron lung. When the virus paralyzed a child's lung muscles, they were placed inside a large iron machine that acted as a pump for their lungs. Thousands of children remained trapped in these machines for months and even years. In 1955, Jonas Salk's vaccine put an end to this fear. The story of polio demonstrates how science nearly eradicated a disease that was once a nightmare for every household. HIV/AIDS. In the early 1980s, doctors in the USA observed a disease that was completely destroying people's immune systems. It was named HIV/AIDS. Initially, there were so many misconceptions that patients were ostracized from society. People were afraid even to shake hands or sit together. This virus wasn't as fast as smallpox or the flu, but it was very clever. It made its home within the body's own defense cells, T cells. This pandemic not only took millions of lives, but it also taught science to fight viruses in new ways. The discovery of antiretroviral therapy, ART, transformed it from a death sentence into a manageable condition. The AIDS pandemic taught humanity that fighting a disease requires not just medicine, but compassion and social unity.